Peach Bowl. Let's go to number 11 Ole Miss, number 12 Penn State. Penn State is a 4-point favorite in this one. That game Saturday, December 30th at noon Eastern on ESPN. We have no New Year's Eve college football bowl games this year, as weird as that sounds after the playoff era has just been littered with them. I personally love this game. The Peach Bowl is the absolute best. Shout out our guy, Kerry Stoken, who runs this thing, does a great job with that each and every year. Marler and I love eating way too much Chick-fil-A at this game. I love that we've got two teams that have a lot to play for. As we're talking about motivation, this matchup should have two teams that want to show the world, hey, you've put us in this tier 2, and we're going to go out and win a quality game to show you that we're better than what the naysayers would say about us. That seems like a very easy motivation, anti-rat poison, whatever you want to call it, for Lane Kiffin and for James Franklin. But Vegas still has Penn State as the 4-point favorite, despite all the instances in which I've banged the drum for Ole Miss. Does there feel like a spot for you to get in with the Ole Miss getting 4, knowing that Penn State has played in a lot of these low-scoring type games? Bob, let's start with you on that. I know this is your region of the country as well. Penn State's got to be right in the wheelhouse for you. How are you feeling about Penn State being a 4-point favorite?
Well, you look at their performance this year against the spread and as a favorite, and we'll dig in a little bit here. It is very good. They tend to excel as a favorite. They've played very well late season in some of these bowl games. But there is a little bit of and I know that you guys are dialed in on the SEC. I know that you really are taking a broad approach too in terms of how you cover this stuff. Here in this area where I'm at, I'm in southern New Jersey, about 5 minutes outside of Philadelphia. There's a big Penn State presence around here. The patience has fully run out with James Franklin. How many times can we get up for a big game, whether it's Ohio State, whether it's Michigan, and just fall flat? And so, we talk all the time about his ability to recruit and, the enthusiasm and, building a program and setting expectations. And then they just can't seem to kind of get over the hump. And it leads you to games like this where, you get a good matchup. It's a compelling game. They've tend to show well in these games. But, I think that there's always a but with James Franklin and his teams.
Very hard to bet on. Marler, do you find yourself being more so intrigued about getting 4 with Lane Kiffin, knowing that Penn State could have some potential issues with the coordinator spots, knowing that they've got co-OCs calling plays after the midseason firing? Manny Diaz is off to Duke, so you've got multiple guys calling plays there. No Chop Robinson, likely going to be a top 10 pick in the draft. Like, is this a spot in which you'd say, yes, hammer Ole Miss +4?
So I don't want to say hammer Ole Miss +4, but all the signs and the writings on the wall that that's not a bad play. Like you're going to hear me almost regurgitate everything I just said about Mizzou into this game, because Penn State, great against the spread. As Bob said, 8-3 against the spread this year. Really, really solid. But where have they struggled? They've struggled in big games. They've struggled especially in the SEC. In, I think, 8 of his bowl games at Penn State, James Franklin is 0-3 against SEC teams. And I've seen him lose to much worse SEC teams in bowl games, which I know maybe historically doesn't have as much of an impact on this year. But I think there's a lot riding on it for both games, or for both teams and both head coaches. And I know what Bob said about, Franklin and kind of the patience running thin. Kiffin is kind of the opposite, where everyone, he is riding high right now. He's in his element. He's got the portal going. He's about to sign a really good class. He might sign a kid from the portal on the sidelines. I have no idea. He might live tweet this game from the sidelines. But at the same time, one thing that Kiffin really hasn't done on his resume is get a big signature victory on a national stage. The LSU game this year may be the closest one you could say, but that's a 9-3 team that was ranked high at the time. I think when you look at the betting standpoint, one of my favorite bets every week of the year was Ole Miss to score first. It really has been for the last 2 years, because when Lane Kiffin is on script, it's a beautiful thing. And that defense has been better than people give it credit for. They're plus money to score first, plus 105. Give me all the value on that. I love them in the first half, getting 3 points there as well. Now, I know that teasers aren't the best thing in the world, but you're going to be hard-pressed to probably talk me out of a teaser this day where I take Ole Miss getting 6, and so they're getting 10.5 total with some other game on the slate. I love Lane Kiffin, what he does offensively. He's got a lot of time on his hands, and this is a game I think that probably matters to him, because this is a notch on your belt where you can have a signature win, even if it's not, a huge game. And also, Connor, you know this better than anybody as a guy that covers the SEC. Congrats to Ole Miss for finally making it to Atlanta. Maybe they're finally on the big stage.
That was a nice little dig at Marler talking about an Ole Miss team that's never been able to play in an SEC championship game. A few thoughts on that. Look, the James Franklin against the SEC thing, I remember being there at the Citrus Bowl 2018 when they lost that game to Kentucky. A really good Kentucky team, really solid defense that they had, but watching James Franklin take the ball out of Trace McSorley's hands yet again was just a baffling thing to witness. And I remember asking him about it after the game. He's like, our receivers, really haven't really caught the ball well this year. And then he fires his receivers coach the next day and explains why Trace McSorley wasn't given the ball on 4th and 6, whatever. The other thing that's worth remembering, though, you talk about James Franklin and the struggles that he has had in the big time games and the record against Michigan, Ohio State. It's not good. It's not. But the Lane Kiffin stat that I've been bringing up all year, that is worth repeating probably in this instance in which he is playing coaching in a New Year's Six bowl game. Entering this season, Lane was 1-19 straight up against Power 5 teams who won at least 9 regular season games. Entering this year, his last such victory was 2011 against Oregon, back when he was USC head coach. He got his second win against a 9-win Power 5 team this year by beating LSU, the marquee win. Penn State is a very, very different team than LSU, like the inverse of LSU, the exact opposite. LSU throws the ball downfield at will. Penn State talks about it like it's a 1975 fashion trend. Like, they are two teams that could not be more different in identity. And so I'm interested to see if Ole Miss can kind of play to their strengths still with that. And knowing that there are still a lot of questions, a lot of moving pieces on the Penn State side, I do think that if you're looking at this from money line play, for just to be able to say Penn State money line, I think that might be a more interesting play. But I also don't really trust James Franklin in a close game. Is this a live bet scenario, or is there anything like that stands out, Bob?
Well, listen, we're making a big deal about James Franklin and not being able to rise to the occasion in big games. Ole Miss is number 11 in the coaches poll, right? All of this data is about top 10 teams, so they're good. They're in the clear. They're out of the woods here. Penn State 1-12 in their last 13 games against top 10 teams in the coaches poll. So fortunately for them, they're sitting at 10, bumping out Ole Miss in this one.
Well, also, Bob, all jokes aside, one, I love the stat. That's a beautiful stat. That's perfect. But when you talk about Penn State, and I know that in the SEC, we like to beat our chest down here about how, the games are one of the trenches. There may not be another team in the country, really. Maybe Oregon, you could say Ohio State, maybe Michigan. But Penn State is built inside and out like an SEC team. Up front, on the lines, I know Chop Robinson might be out, but the amount of depth that they have specifically on the defensive line is really, really solid. So I think that that's going to be, I think SEC fans are going to be surprised when they see how physical Penn State is. I think it also leads into a potential situation when you talk about player props. Maybe you shy away from Quinshon Judkins and you focus more on the Jackson Dart and Trey Harrison and some of the things through the air.
Yeah, I think that there's so much of a correlation between the way that this game is going to flow and who ultimately wins it. You talk about Penn State's inability to throw the football down the field. They don't try it. They aren't good at it. It's been so conservative the entire year. And you look at 48.5 on the total and you say okay, I really do think that this is a situation. If you want to get creative, if you're looking to really kind of take a shot here, I think that it might be as simple as just saying, if this game goes over the total, I don't see how Penn State produces enough offense to win the game. If it stays under the total, then I think that they probably find a way. If they play in the mud, if it's going to be a grinder type of game, then I think it kind of plays more to what Penn State wants to do. I think you were talking about the ability for Ole Miss to maybe come out and score early and sort of set the tone. You look at what Penn State's done this season. 10 of their 12 games have stayed under the total in the first quarter. It's just what they do. Right. And that's what I said. When I look at how I'm going to play this, I might take a shot and kind of try to correlate these things up and do a parlay on it.
I think that makes a lot of sense too, because it just that's the narrative. Penn State doesn't want to be in a shootout, and Ole Miss doesn't want to be in a rock fight, and they've won so few
let me
games
just
like
give
that.
you this real quick. I mean, like 79 passing yards against Rutgers, and I mean, like I know that they're respectable. Greg Schiano,
Bowl team.
keep chopping, but like 79 yards, 70 yards passing against Michigan. They threw for $191 against Ohio State, but they threw 42 times. I mean, they just have no ability to create big plays through the passing game. And I just, maybe it is a little like SEC bias in this way. Maybe it's like the proximity to Penn State and knowing so many disappointed Penn State fans on an annual basis. But like, I just look at it and I know that Lane Kiffin, based on what you guys are talking about, has a lot of shortcomings in these higher stakes games against better opponents. But I can't bring myself to bet on Penn State in this game. And that's knowing that they're 9-3 against the spread this year, 9-1 against the spread as a favorite. Like they excel in these spots, this year, but man, I just can't do it.
It is definitely, it feels like a very, very tricky spot. Wonder if Ole Miss can get into the backfield as well. You've got guys returning on that defensive line. It feels like they're adding a new stud from the portal on the defensive line every day. Potential big motivation. Hey, I still need to be playing significant snaps next year for the Jared Ivies, the JJ McGee's, those types of guys in this one. A little bit of a Pete Golding prove it game. We call it a how do you like me now, Toby Keith game potentially for Pete Golding. I don't know if anybody's going to go out here and flex after shutting down the Penn State offense, but you know what? I guess Michigan cried about it, so why can't Ole Miss cry about it as well? Really, really good matchup though. Yeah, that's true. That's a really good point. Michigan versus everybody. I do have a little bit more of, even though I feel like we know these teams really well, I think it's tough from a confidence pool standpoint for all the things that we just brought up, because you're probably going to feel dumb either way if you're like, oh my God, why did I put significant confidence pool points on James Franklin in a big time game that could be relatively close? And then you could make the same exact argument for Lane Kiffin. So to me, this is more kind of a lower confidence pool type game. It's okay if sometimes you have teams that you feel like well in a confidence pool, and you're still looking at it like, man, this could be a really tough spot, even though I do think Ole Miss is the better team. Marler, any thoughts on that?
From the confidence pool standpoint, one of my favorite things about this show so far has been you taking all the lead on that, because I mean, you're asking me to budget numbers. I don't do that well financially. I don't do well with my carbs or calories. I can't do that in a bowl pool. I will tell you this. I do love Jackson Dart over 1.5 total touchdowns. Again, that's passing and rushing if you can find both, because this is a situation where I think that Penn State is going to be able to key in on Quinshon Judkins. Like, Judkins is a really good back, kind of takes a step back this year compared to where they were last year. I also think that in physical matchups, Jackson Dart, hands down, I can't scientifically prove this, but he's the toughest Jackson, with the way they spell Jackson, I think maybe in the world. Like, nobody with Jackson with an X and an S is as tough as this Jackson Dart. I mean, that bar is set very low, I think, but like, he's been very, very tough and a gamer in a lot of physical spots. This is gonna be a very physical game. I think watching him out of the backfield, being able to run on some of these, like RPOs and stuff like that, especially close to the goal line. Saw it against Bama. Saw it a couple times, I think, against LSU. I think he might have a good day with his legs too.
Yeah, over under 1.5 times Jackson Dart loses his helmet with some sort of run. He leads college football in it. Yeah. Take the over.
Drops an F-bomb as soon as it's off, just on national TV every single time.
Yeah, happens to the best of us. Before we continue, a quick reminder, we got 2 games left here that we're going to be discussing today. A reminder that you must be 21 years or older to gamble. Please gamble responsibly and within your limits. If you need assistance, please call 1-800-522-4700. Hey, sports fans, we've got an exciting offer exclusively for new users of ESPN Bet. When you join, be sure to enter the promo code SOUTH during sign up to unlock an additional $50 in your betting account. That's right. You can wager on your favorite sports and receive up to $250 in bonus bets when you use the promo code SOUTH. Please remember, you must be 21 years old to participate in sports betting. We encourage responsible gambling within your means. If you ever need assistance or support, please reach out to 1-800-522-4700. Join the action today and make the most of this fantastic offer.